Thank you so much to our musician, Jerry Reserve. We really appreciate you being here. Good evening. I know there are people still trickling in, but mindful of our time, we're going to get started. My name is Laura Williams. I'm the president of People for a Safer Society. And as you may know, People for a Safer Society was formed in response to the Sandy Hook tragedy that occurred on December 14, 2012. The angels outside the church represent the lives lost that day. Since that day, we've lost innumerable lives to gun violence in this country. We use this occasion to honor the memory of those lost and to recommit ourselves to being part of the solution where gun violence prevention is concerned. We welcome and thank our neighbors and our partners here, the National Council of Jewish Women, Chicago North Shore, Mothers Against Community Gun Violence, the NAACP at Evanston North Shore, and especially Pastor Tim Brown and Trinity Lutheran Church for letting us use this space this evening. We're also honored to welcome community leaders and elected officials who are at the forefront of gun violence prevention at the local, state, and national levels. And finally, we're grateful for our speakers who have experienced the loss of gun violence firsthand. We hope that community events like this serve to lift our spirits and strengthen our resolve to make a difference in the fight against gun violence. I'd like to introduce Pastor Tim Brown to welcome us to this space.
Good evening and welcome to Trinity Lutheran Church for this 9th annual Interfaith Vigil for all victims of gun violence. It's a blessing to be in the presence of so many people of goodwill, seeking to put forward a vision of life and community based in compassion, mutual care, and kindness, even as we seek to deconstruct the cultural ethos that is too ready to embrace destructive powers, and more specifically, guns. For some of us, it comes as we pick up on essential strands of our own faith traditions. For others here, it's about tapping into the essential goodness of the human spirit. For all of us, it is the essential stuff of life together. While this event is linked chronologically to the Sandy Hook tragedy, those horrific events of December 14, 2012, the difficult reality is that each intervening year has brought a whole host of similar events in similar schools. 30 thus far this year, the second most recent of which was in a town just north of where I grew up, near Detroit. And of course, in our own community, we've experienced the pain of such violence. Most recently at a gas station on Green Bay Road 2 weeks ago, where death and injury came to young people in a hail of bullets. And so, this night, we remember, we grieve, we hope, we pray, and then we work together for a better future. Let us pray. God of love, we pray that you would bless us as we gather to remember, grieve, hope, and to pray. As we watch and listen and consider the well-being of our community this evening, comfort those who grieve, and grant all of us strength, hope, and heightened resolve to work together for a more peaceful future together. Amen.
Thank you so much, Pastor Brown. It's now my pleasure to invite to the podium Dr. Tracy Kurtzer, who has been a gun violence prevention advocate for years and currently serves as the Medical Director of Trauma-Informed Care and Education for Northwestern Medicine. Dr. Kurtzer.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for having me today. We hold these vigils around the country in December because of the tragedy in Sandy Hook that occurred 9 years ago this week. And actually, it was a very meaningful event in my trajectory towards more direct involvement in the gun violence movement. I joined Moms Demand Action a year later and was a member of the Evanston group. So it's really wonderful to be back in the communities where I raised my 2 daughters and delivered my last baby, all of whom I still feel a big responsibility to do all I can to protect from gun violence. So it truly is an honor to be asked to to speak at this particular memorial for gun violence victims and their survivor families. And I'm going to speak about the trauma from gun violence and how it impacts all of us. Trauma is an event or series of events that is perceived by an individual as harmful or even life-threatening, and it can lead to adverse impact on one's physical or psychosocial well-being. Death, especially when unexpected or violent in nature, is often true with gun violence injuries, can have serious traumatic effects to individuals, communities, and society as a whole. At the individual level, we know a highly traumatic event like losing a loved one to gun violence can lead to acute and chronic changes in signaling to parts of the brain. Chronic or complex trauma can impact the areas of our brain that store memories and are in charge of decision-making. And this can make it extremely difficult for some survivors to work or even function as well with daily activities following the traumatic event. Social activities can be almost, excruciatingly difficult. The sensory signaling axis often becomes overdeveloped as a result of complex trauma, and that can lead to unexpected physiologic stress responses to sights and sounds and smells, things that remind us of a loved one. Fear of something happening like this, similar to us or to other family members, and concerns about safety can dominate when one close to us is suddenly and unexpectedly gone from our lives. Depression, anxiety, PTSD can also result. So when others and society in general don't really understand or acknowledge the impact of these forms of trauma, and they don't consider the long-term effects on individuals, secondary trauma can occur by not adequately supporting the survivor families left behind. By denying their need to grieve because they have to go immediately back to work, sometimes the next day, sometimes to make ends meet or pay for medical or funeral expenses. By not having prompt, accessible, trauma-responsive mental health services, by not addressing the root causes that led to the death of their loved ones, and doing all we can to protect others who also may be at risk, particularly from vulnerable populations, we contribute further to the trauma of the families and communities most impacted. In addition, trauma in the form of interpersonal violence, especially gun violence, can impact others outside of the family and friends of the victim. Community members can suffer just from proximity to the shooting and feeling vulnerable themselves. Those who identify with the victims, for example, are youth who can be traumatized when they see others who look just like them harmed by gun violence. All of us in and around Chicago are aware of the vast numbers of firearms now in the pockets of our fellow citizens and in the homes and neighborhoods. So we're aware of the ease at which guns are often used to resolve conflicts, and sometimes this involves innocent bystanders being injured or killed. So we all know some risk is present to our families and ourselves when we walk out of our doors, and we live with that fear as a result, and that's a form of trauma. So we all really have to do our part and take a stand to break the cycles of violence and trauma, or we're really doomed as a society to live with this legacy of harm transferred from generation to generation. Don't you, like me, want a better future with less violence and harm for our children, for our grandchildren, and for future generations? I will continue to honor with action and advocating for trauma-informed responses for our survivors and gun violence prevention efforts at every level I can have an impact. And in honor of all of those who should be with us here still today and will be honored to remember tonight, I hope you'll join with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tracy, and thank you so much for the wonderful work you're doing. It means so much. I'd like to now invite to the podium Reverend Dr. Michael Neighbors from the NAACP of Evanston and the North Shore. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I'm grateful to be here and to have been extended this invitation to come and share in this somber moment and serious moment about one of the more, if not the most pressing issue our nation is facing. So, Laura, I'm grateful for this invitation, and I've had an opportunity to meet Pastor Tim, and I'm grateful for that as well, and look forward to the speakers that are to come. I am a Baptist preacher, so I need somebody with a timer or a stopwatch to let me know when I have about a minute left. But I do want to share with you some things along a storyline that I think is very important. I was 9 years old when my grandfather shared a story with me that was passed down to him by his father. He was born in a small town just outside of Tupelo, Mississippi, called Okolona in 1898. His father told him that his father was one of 5 brothers that was also born in the area. And one day there was a shooting that took place at a cotton mill in Okolona. And it involved one of my grandfather's uncles. And he had gone into work that day and for some reason was shot by the owner of the cotton mill. And he was wounded in the leg. He walked back home with a wounded leg, and he took a rifle and walked back to the cotton mill, and he aimed and tried to shoot the owner of the cotton mill, who was white. I'm listening to this story as a child. I'm in amazement. I'm shocked by all of this. It sounds like the Wild Wild West, obviously. And then he turns around and goes back home. The word gets out in this very small community called Okolona about what happened, and his brothers immediately go to his home. So there are 5 Black men there. Later on that evening, the Ku Klux Klan come along with the sheriff and a deputy. And the sheriff and the deputy knock on the door, and they are invited to come in. They come inside, and they see that these 5 men have rifles, but it's a particular kind of rifle. It's a Winchester rifle, and it's a new Winchester rifle that has a repeating trigger that's able to shoot 12 shots with just one pull of the trigger. And so the sheriff and the deputy, they walk out and they tell the Klansmen, you all can do what you want to do, but we're going home, because there are 5 Winchester rifles in all of Chickasaw County, and they're in this house. And that was the story that I remember at 9 years old. The first story about gun violence. The latest story that I remember involving my family occurred in January of this year, when there was a shooting spree that started on the south side of Chicago and ended with a woman in her 60s being shot and killed here in Evanston. I have a daughter who is in her 2nd year of PhD work at Northwestern in the philosophy department. On that day when that happened, she was driving down Howard near CVS. When all of this occurred, she saw the man who had done the shooting running out of IHOP, running just past her car. She stopped, there was gunfire, and the gunfire went on each side of her car, and she saw the man shot and killed in the middle of the road. Gun violence is very real in America. And not only is it very real, but it is particularly egregious and disproportionate when it comes to communities of color. The CDC and other organizations that keep statistics will be the first to suggest that to you that 3 to 10 times the amount of whites who are shot and killed by gun violence that happens to Black and brown communities. So we have this situation and we have this tragedy that exists around us. And the question becomes, what do we want to do about it? It's like so many other issues, you really don't get too involved until it hits close to home. Well, it hit close to home on November 28th, just down the road on Green Bay and Foster in Evanston, when 5 teenagers were shot and 1 was killed. And there was 1 young woman now who is on life support at Children's Lurie Hospital in Chicago. I spoke with the family earlier today, and they are very, very optimistic about their loved one. But you also heard that at least one of the shooters was apprehended and arrested on yesterday. And the story goes that a gang in Chicago offered him $300 to shoot 5 children from the ages of 14 to 18. Something is wrong. It's not just local, it's not just family, but something is wrong in our nation. And I think until people of goodwill and people in faith communities like Trinity and all of the other faith communities in our area, Evanston and Skokie, until we come together and are able to verbally say that something is wrong, this is not normal, it's not natural, it's not the way that things ought to be in any community in our nation, then I think that this is going to continue to happen. This idea of abnormality taking the place of normal occurred just earlier this week when 2 congresspersons actually released Christmas postcards, donning guns with their children, and sharing them on social media outlets, and I'm sure sending them to their very close friends. It's not normal, it's not normal. And Christmas is supposed to be just the opposite of the image that is being portrayed by these cards. So I believe that a lot has to be done, but one of them is having gatherings like this on a regular basis. Another one is very much like our sister church in Evanston just the other day, Mount Zion, decided that they would continue their tradition of having people turn in guns, working with the Evanston Police Department. And I saw a picture, I don't know how many guns were turned in, but it certainly looked like 50 to 60 guns were turned in. While that is a small step, it's important for you to know that the guns that were turned in, that small number, is much, much less than the number of guns that are being sold on a regular basis. So I think that it's going to depend on people of goodwill to gather together and to say that we have to stop the madness and we have to articulate that and share it. And you can do it in so many ways. Obviously, you can write your congresspeople. We are so grateful to have Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky who's here. You can write your local elected officials. We're so happy to have our state representative who is here. We were chatting with you just, it seems like a week ago. When we called the press conference to denounce the shooting that took place in Evanston. We're happy to have Mayor Biss, who is here, who was at that occasion as well. So I think that we have the people in place who are people of goodwill, who want to do something, who want to stop the madness. And we have to continue to do that, but we have to continue to educate our own communities. We have to share with our own communities that gun violence is never the way. We had a wonderful mental health Zoom conference at our congregation just a few weeks ago. And it was an amazing Zoom conference that was really targeting seniors. How are you doing under the reality of this global pandemic after 21 months? How are you doing with the rise of discrimination that Black and brown people are facing in the United States over these past 21 months? And when it came time for them to talk and to share what their greatest concern was, it was not about the mental duress of a global pandemic due to COVID-19. It was not about the whole discrimination piece. It was about violence. It was about being frightened to come out of their doors because of the violence that is occurring in our area, and particularly gun violence. And I'm going to sit down now. I think maybe I have a minute or two left, but let me share with you. I also sit on the community advisory board for Amita St. Francis. And Amita St. Francis about 2 years ago did a survey for Evanston and part of North Chicago to talk about what are the main health concerns that residents in this area are dealing with. What are your main concerns? And they listed 5 of them. And I was so interested in hearing that. I thought obviously it was going to be maybe cancer, different forms of cancer, this or that. The number one concern was mental health related to violence. Here we are in 2021 in this nation that has so much capacity and ability to move forward. We have information technology that is out of this world. I was talking to Pastor Brown, we were amazed at almost at the drop of a dime when everything shut down, our churches were able to go to live stream. We were able to continue to engage in praise and worship and to lift the spirit of people. If we can do that, if we have the capacity to respond to the imminent danger of something like a pandemic, we also have the resources and the capacity and the heart and the passion to be able to respond to gun violence that is occurring. So we have to come together and we have to stop pointing fingers. We have to stop saying it's your fault, it's your fault. You need to say this to your people. You need to say that to your people. Something is happening. Our community as a result is a victim of it. And the only way we're going to be able to overcome it is by coming together and naming it. So that's why I'm here, and I thank you for the opportunity to be able to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Neighbors, for sharing your goodwill with us. Your passion is really obvious. Now we're going to welcome to the stage Milagros and Rafael Burgos, who have been tireless advocates in the fight against gun violence since the murder of their daughter, Alexandria. They're also board members of People for a Safer Society. We're honored to have them share their story with us.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. My name is Milagros Burgos, and this is my husband, Rafael Burgos. We would like to thank everyone who is joining us, those streaming and those who are here tonight. As we honor the victims of Sandy Hook and other lives gone too soon, let's not forget this was due to gun violence. That this is one of the leading causes of an unfortunate loss of so many innocent lives. We honor our daughter Alexandria Burgos, whose life was abruptly taken by a stray bullet on October 19, 2014. It's been over 7 years that our child was taken from us. Every year since, we advocate for safer gun legislation, not just in her memory, but for every life that has been taken. We must not forget that unfortunately, many families experience the trauma of gun violence every single day in this country. This should not be the norm. As a society, we must take action. Our daughter, Alexandria, had a promising future. She was a freshman at Wilbur College, studied to become a social worker. Her sweet disposition and caring nature led her to this career choice. Her passion was to help others. She truly would have helped so many, only if she was still with us. We live with her memories, such as the song that we would sing. Ali, Ali, ocean, free, free, free. Won't you come and play with me? As this was one of the songs we would sing, my darling daughter, also I wish you can play. I know that you were not a baby, but at 18 years old, or when you weren't that old, it just feels like yesterday. We live with a gap in our hearts and take one step at a time. Here I wish we could sit and talk. The person who took your life, how I wish they knew your smile, your heart of gold. Maybe it would have just made them think it's not worth being bold. A stray bullet took your innocent life. Oh, if only knew how you grew. The love you had toward everyone made me and many so go above to be your soft voice. As I try to take your struggles to strength, it is still hard to fill our gap. My Alexandria, we miss you so much. As the chair is empty from your absence, I tell you this, you will forever be remembered. My only daughter and my loving son that's always with us. If you knew how you flew deep up to the clouds, where heaven opened the gates and welcomed you home. Miss you so, forever in our hearts. From your mama, your little brother who is now big and we're so proud of him. Your dad, baby girl, I will be your voice in all voices from senseless goodbye. I love you. We love you, Alexandria. And here's my husband that's gonna say a few words.
Thank you, everyone. My daughter Alexandra, she had a beautiful smile, kind and loving soul. She had a dream. She had dreams and expectations. She wanted to live. We received a devastating phone call. Like so many parents, that our loved ones were shot and killed. Like Sandy Hook, Columbine, Stone Douglas, Virginia Tech, Thousand Oaks, El Paso, Boulder, Las Vegas, Sutherland Springs, Pulse nightclub in Orlando. There has been at least over 2,400 mass shootings since Sandy Hook. When will the madness end? I leave you with this quote by Martin Luther King Jr. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add that Lily and Raphael, in sharing their story with us, obviously it's so touching and so meaningful, and they give back in so many ways. Lily made all the bookmarks that are out in the front for all of you to enjoy, and they just keep giving back, which is inspiring to me, and I really appreciate that. Now I will welcome Angela Sims Haynes of Mothers Against Community Gun Violence. We thank Angela for being willing to share with us her personal loss regarding her daughter Mia.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for having me. As she said, my name is Angela Sims Haynes. I am the mother of Maya Chanel Sims. My daughter was murdered on October the 10th, 2020. And from that day, my life will never be the same. That was my firstborn. That was my rock. We have a organization called Nurturing Neighborhoods, where we actually go out in the community, and where we give out quotes, we give out clothes, I write resumes. My daughter was my right hand. She went to the store for me. She took kids in for me. My right hand left me. Not on her own, but because someone decided to pick up a gun. And it hurted me so bad that in this day and age that we can take a life without having any remorse. What did I do? How can I live? When the people were gone, the phone calls stopped, no one was around, the hurt, the anger, I can't eat, I can't sleep, the community members, no phone calls. What do we do? I took on 2 or 3 projects that I was working with community members and seeing what it was that I can do to honor my child. And it just didn't seem to work. What was I doing wrong? I'm doing everything that I can. My daughter was my life. And I found an organization called Mothers Against Community Gun Violence. It's stationed out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Am I going all the way to Minnesota every day to fight for my child? The lady said, no. She said, I'll do one better. Latoya Black said, we'll be there for you. My daughter was 25 years old. She at the time was 4 years old. Actually, her daughter's birthday was Thursday. I'm celebrating today. But I would never miss an opportunity to speak for my child. Maya, everything that she did, 2 jobs, she worked at UIC. Everything that a kid can do, she was doing it the right way. But she went out and went to a party with a friend. It was 7 of them. One didn't come back alive. My soul left me. No one would understand the hurt, the pain that a mother would go through at 1 o'clock in the morning when somebody tells you she's gone. Who is she? Because the person that I birthed had a name. When they tell you, well, we can't let you see her, you can't let me see who? I had that child. I named her. We kept her safe. I showed my daughter a better way. My daughter raised me from being in the streets to get a master's degree because I wanted to show her there was a better way in life. And she was there with me every step of the way, including creating an organization for the community. And they took her. So on October the 10th, the only thing that I can do is grab my grandbaby and hold her. Because the loss of losing her mom and seeing her is a split image. I'm raising my child all over again. It hurts me even to this day to see my grandbaby because she laughed like her, she looks like her. It's nothing that I can do because I have to take care of this baby. This is my soul. But what we decided to do in my family was help me to heal. What is it that I'm doing wrong? So Mothers Against Community Gun Violence gave me a voice. They gave me an outlet that I can go and I can actually share my story. Share my story to other mothers. How did this happen? How am I able to stand in front of anyone and speak on losing a child when I'm so broken? And it was just simple. You tell your story. You tell her story. What is it that you want? What is your ask? And my ask is simple. The community needs to come together and we need to find a way to get rid of the gun violence out of the community, eradicate the gun violence out of the community. We need the community elected officials, as they are in our community now, to stand up with us. Help us fight for justice. Help us fight to get the guns out of the community. Because just like an epidemic, you have to contain the situation before it evolves other places. And that's what it's doing now. But I would like to share with you, and I'm so sorry I got off track. I did write something, but this really is hurtful. It hits home. And I can only imagine how you all feel. It's not something that we can live with, and not every day that you get up, you see something that'll remind you of. You hear a song and you can have to turn the radio on. It's certain things that you can't even do on a regular basis that you was used to doing every single day. But because that loved one is gone, it's not there. And gun violence is so common in the community, in the city, that you hear gunshots and people still walking like it's nothing. It's not the 4th of July. It's gunshots. And we just acclimated into seeing that, oh, that was one person, but that one person was somebody's child. That one person did not ask to leave this earth. That one person deserved a chance to be whatever it was that God intended for them to be. But gun violence in our community is so heavy and it's just so heart-wrenching. It just takes away from the family. And not just the family, but the people that's in the community, because that person had something to deal with other people in the community. We have to be strong and diligent in asking for what we want. And one, I ask for the community to stand together to make sure that we keep gun violence on the forefront of conversation instead of hidden in the back like the lives that was lost behind that. They really matter. And if I can just end this with reading our mission statement for Mothers Against Community Gun Violence. The organization actually offer online grieving counseling for mothers, for children, and also for fathers. We also have nutrition, such as myself. I lost over 80 pounds from October 10th to now. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I didn't know what to do. So they have classes that teach you how to eat when you grieving. What is it that you can put in your body to help you? Mothers Against Community Gun Violence have yoga, heal on the inside, so that you can learn how to deal with things. You have to learn how to keep yourself up. You have to learn how to eat just so that you can make it. I didn't know how I got out of bed for 9 months since my daughter was gone. And they say, how did you do it? I did not do anything. God did. Because I did not know what I did for the first 2 weeks that she left. It was all a blank. I could not plan my daughter's service. I did not go and see her body. I couldn't do any of that. I did a peace walk in July for her birthday. Instead of giving a party, I decided to share her story with the organization. For the first time since she had passed on July, I had a peace walk and walked over to where my daughter lost her life. But it was power behind numbers, because I stayed 2 blocks from where the incident occurred. And I would literally go all around before I even go in that area. But on that day, because we have organizations and there was so many people that was there with me, I went. And when I went, it still hurted. But it was the people that was with me that helped us come over. It's like you can do it. And fight for your child when they are gone due to gun violence is something that it won't bring them back. We never can get them back. But to know that we can fight for justice and be their voice. Another thing that Mothers Against Community Gun Violence put a toolkit together to help parents fight legislation or bring to legislation what they want to ask for in their community against community gun violence. We're here, we're not going anywhere. My daughter, my Chanel Sims, and I love her so much, my soul aches sometimes. It's hard to breathe. But in her voice, she said, my mom, y'all don't know my mom. My mama never quit. And I won't. And she said it, and I stand before today. I say, not on my block. That is our slogan. That is what I present in our community. That's what I put in my window. I pass it out to the community. We have window decals, door decals, not on my block. It's time for the gun violence to cease. And where does it start from? It starts from within. It starts in my community. I can ask legislation to do a lot of things, but I can also be a voice in my community where I can say that this is occurring and where we stand. What is it that we can do to help the police district? What is it that we can do to help the city? We need to be the one to speak out. We need to be the one to tell what's going on in the community. so some of these done activities can cease. Maya Chanel Sims' life was lost, but I'm her voice and it will never die. Her spirit will never die. And I would like to, I'm sorry, I would like to read you all our mission, because once the mission came about, it was something that, because Mia's gone now, it really hit home. So our mission for Mothers Against Community Gun Violence is to see the epidemic of the community gun violence eradicated out of our, I'm sorry. It's just to bring awareness to the community gun violence, to ask the community to step up, to ask the community members to say something. If you see something, you say something. If you in doubt, we have a reward for my daughter. It doesn't matter how it happened. It's the fact that it did happen. Maya, 25, loving, caring, honor. Her daughter, Maya, just turned 6 years old on Thursday. It is so sad that she couldn't be here for her child. And I'm stepping up. I would never let them down, but also I would never let my community down from that day forward. I am my community's keeper. I am a voice for the people that lost their lives, even if their parents can't stand. Whatever God put in front of me, I am willing to deal with it. I will stand. So I am here for any mother that needs it. If my number, or anyone that's here, if you need my number, if you need some assistance, Mothers Against Community Gun Violence can definitely help you. They may be stationed out of Minnesota, but I am a liaison for Chicago. And my daughter, Maya Chanel Sims, in our spirit, we will be here for everyone or anyone who needs assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. Whoops. Thank you so much, Angela. You truly honor Maya with your action. It's now my honor to introduce Mayor Daniel Biss. Since 2010, he has served his community first as a state representative, then as a state senator, and most recently as the mayor of Evanston. Mayor Biss has long been an advocate for gun violence prevention measures, and we're pleased that he's with us. Mayor Biss. Let's do this.
Good evening. First of all, Laura, thank you. Thank you to the organizers for putting this together. Thank you to everyone for being here this evening, both in person and on the live stream. We have an emergency in this country. First of all, an enormous thank you, Angela. Thank you so much for being here, for telling your story, for bringing Maya to life for all of us. It's not something that I'm going to forget, that's for sure. Thank you, Rafael and Milagros, for bringing Alexandria to life. It's a gift to all of us here in this room to have the privilege to hear those stories. We can't know the pain that you have experienced, but we surely know that no one would judge you if you chose to react to it by withdrawing, by stepping back, by knowing that it's somebody else's job to fight this fight. And your decision to do the opposite is an extraordinary gift to our whole community. It's a sacred gift, and I think the rest of us have a moral responsibility to honor that gift with our own work, matching and doubling the effort that you put in. This is my second time spent in a church today. This morning, I was in a church on Simpson Street at the funeral of Carl Dennison III. Carl Dennison III will be lost less than 2 weeks ago tomorrow evening in that
tragic and unthinkable shooting that occurred on Green Bay. This morning, I had the solemn honor of speaking with each of his parents, with embracing his mother, with seeing that pain. Trying to figure out what to say to demonstrate that our community understands the responsibility that we have in light of these absurd, vicious acts. And so you'll forgive me if I'm not feeling very patient this evening as we think about the work that needs to be done on this issue, this epidemic that exists in our community, in our region, and in our country. And we understand that it is not only about gun policy. We understand that we have a tremendous amount of work to do when it comes to dealing with the mental health epidemic that exists in our society today. We understand that there are questions of economic injustice and racism and lack of economic opportunity that are deeply embedded in this issue. Pastor Neighbors, when you talk about a $300 payment that sends somebody off on a path to engage in an act like that, that may be, as in fact it surely is, unthinkable, but it also is a lesson to us about the interaction between savage economic injustice and the scourge of gun violence. We know, and I say this on behalf of the city of Evanston, we know that we have more work to do when it comes to direct outreach on the street, connecting with youth who are not connected enough to the social opportunities that we provide in this community and to economic opportunity as well, who may feel that they have no choice but to move toward a life of violence. But for all of that knowledge, it needs to be said that you cannot have a society with this many guns readily available and expect that people are going to be safe. It's simply not possible. It is simply not possible. And I'm sick and tired of hearing a tortured misinterpretation of a part of our Constitution that was written at a different time for a different reason by people with different stuff on their mind as an excuse for why we can't do the right thing. It just is not acceptable anymore. And so it is important that we're here tonight. It is, of course, no surprise at all that it's important and it's a gift to us that Congresswoman Schakowsky, who has been at the forefront of this battle, who has never accepted the political assessment that there's just not much we can do, that she's here tonight, that Representative Denise Lang-Stonebeck, who's been a leading advocate on this issue in our region since long before she thought to run for office. It is important that they are here with us tonight, prepared to stand up for the kinds of changes that we need to make. But we just need to ensure that all of their colleagues across this state and across this country hear the demand, and that the excuses are no longer accepted, that the kind of mindless repetition of the status quo as though that's the only world that we could possibly live in is no longer accepted. And that we simply act on the very obvious common sense thing that all of us understand, that if we value the lives of our children the way we claim we value them, we have to get the guns off the streets and end this ready availability of weapons of murder. It can be done. It's done across the world in a lot of other places, and it's time for us to do the same. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight as a part of that effort. And let us not forget the sacred and solemn responsibility that comes with this issue when we walk out of this church tonight. Let us carry it with us until this effort meets with the success that our community requires. Thank you very much.
A little tall. Thank you so much for your leadership, Mayor Biss. And I have the privilege of introducing Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. The Congresswoman has represented the 9th District of Illinois since 1997 and has been a strong voice in Washington when it comes to advocating for stronger national gun laws. We are so honored that she's here tonight. Thank you.
Well, it is such an honor to be with all of you tonight. Each of you that has spoken has brought such important messages here tonight. I especially want to thank the Burgos family, want to thank Angela. You know, but their stories are stories of tragedy, of sorrow, of missing, but also of courage and hope and a belief that we can see a better future. And that's really, I think, the thing that brings us all together tonight. Reverend Neighbors, you were talking about that this is not normal. You know, we are, and Daniel, you alluded to it, we are the only nation in the world that has this level of gun violence. About 125 people a day die because of guns in the United States of America. That doesn't happen around the world, and that doesn't mean that these countries don't have people with mental illness, or even that they don't have inequality. And so what are the strategies? I bring you some good news, some hopeful news tonight. You know, there is a program of violence intervention programs that have been developed around the country. And what they involve is in looking at the problem as a public health issue, not so much as a police issue or policing issue. And $5 billion now is in a bill that passed the House of Representatives, hopefully soon in the Senate, the Build Back Better bill, to support these programs. And these programs are run by community people, people who are known, sometimes people who have been involved themselves in violence. And what we see is that someone feels dissed, feels that they've been insulted in some way, and because of the access to guns, may decide the best solution is to take out a gun and shoot someone. And then what happens? Then there's now this cycle of retaliation that happens. But these violence intervention programs step in to that fray and say we don't have to continue on and on with the retaliation. And where those programs exist, they have seen a decrease in violence from 40 to 70% in those communities. And so that's in this bill to advance these programs. And now we have to pass Build Back Better. And I promise you that is going to happen, although we continue to have to advocate. true anymore. At least among my Democratic colleagues. And this wasn't always true. Everyone understands that now the high political ground is to say, we have to get rid of these guns. We have to do something tangible about gun violence. And so the changes, though, what made that kind of sea change in the political environment? The people in this room who have advocated for change have made it happen. As an organizer, by my history and by nature, I actually believe what happens outside the Congress is equally, often more important than what happens inside the Congress. And so we only need to do a couple of things. We need to, I'm sorry to bring politics, but this is very, very political. It's very political. It's about politics. If we succeed, and we have to, of maintaining a Democratic majority in the House of Representatives, where we have passed a number of gun violence protection bills already. And if we are able just to elect a few more Democratic senators, and we're coming up into an election year, then we will be able to maintain this Democratic majority in the Senate. Then we will be able to overcome the problem that we've had, and we'll say procedural issues, that is the filibuster. And when we do that, we will be able to pass one after another of these bills, these laws, put them into effect that could actually reduce the presence of these weapons. We've done it before, we can do it again in the Congress of the United States, but we're all going to have to get involved, not in all these beautiful programs, and I'm all for them. I am with you on the local level, on the state level, on the federal level. We have to deal with the issues of mental illness, and we have to deal with the issues of equity in our country. But we also have to pass these bills. We can do this. And as John Lewis, my great friend, icon of change in this country, has said, never give up, never give in. And he advises people to get in trouble, good trouble. So let's get all these things done, and we can have a safer community. We can save our children, and we can help save our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Chakowski, and thank you so much for being our voice in Washington. We really appreciate it. I'm proud to call our next speaker, my friend. Denise Stonebeck is the founder and past president of People for a Safer Society. She works tirelessly to educate Illinoisans about ways to keep their families safe from gun violence, as well as advocating for laws that will reduce gun violence. As a freshman legislator in Springfield, Representative Stonebeck is already at the forefront of gun violence prevention legislation, and we are thrilled to have her join us.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for that introduction and for the invitation to be here today. I'm honored to be here and grateful to the event organizers for your extremely critical work. Millie, Raphael, and Angela, thank you so much for courageously sharing your heartbreaking stories and lifting up your lost daughters and their stories. They are making a difference. They absolutely are. Your stories I've heard multiple times, and they fall not on deaf ears, but ears that are listening and that are making real change to gun policies. So on the 9th anniversary of the Sandy Hook shooting, once again, we're here coming together to mourn the victims of gun violence. And that fateful Friday morning is one I recall very clearly. I was a project manager working in educational publishing on textbooks, coincidentally for second graders. And I tuned in to listen to the news, and I heard of the shooting. And like all of you, I was shocked, horrified, and even brought to tears. I thought to myself, what is the good of working on these textbooks when first and second graders are being gunned down in their classroom? In their classroom. I was appalled at the lack of action by lawmakers in the weeks that followed, when the Sandy Hook parents went to Washington and Congress failed to pass basic background checks. I was outraged, and I took that outrage and I turned it into action. I founded the Illinois nonprofit People for a Safer Society to reduce and prevent gun violence through awareness, education, and advocacy. And I led it for 6 years until I stepped down to run for office. I helped build and found the Illinois Gun Violence Prevention Coalition. And together, these organizations were instrumental in passing the Gun Dealer Certification Act, the Firearms Restraining Order, and the 72-hour waiting period right here in Illinois. But right now, we need to assess the current situation. Where are we today with this issue in our community and in Illinois? And what are the solutions to this issue? Solutions have been put forward by Congresswoman Schakowsky. Solutions have been put forward by Pastor Neighbors and by Mayor Best. During the pandemic, Illinois led the nation in gun sales. With so many people obtaining guns, many for the first time, the risk for gun tragedies has dramatically increased. And we can certainly see that in our communities. We just reached the grim milestone of more than 1,000 people murdered in Cook County this year, and that's the most since 1994. As a state legislator, gun violence prevention is my top issue. I've introduced multiple pieces of legislation on gun safety and passed a bill to strengthen Illinois' firearms restraining order law. And I want to thank every single advocate in here that reached out to their state legislator, that advocated in their communities and educated their communities about that critically important bill that passed and was signed into law by Governor Pritzker. Another one of my bills that I'm currently working on aims to help law enforcement solve gun crimes and bring closure to victims. If we pause to think about the effect that each gun homicide has on the victim's family, on their friends, and on the community, it's astounding. The victim's family and friends bear the grief and the shock of the violent death of their loved one. And if law enforcement is not able to obtain the evidence they need, the perpetrator escapes accountability and the victim's family is left without closure. Unsolved gun crimes can result in the community losing trust in law enforcement's ability to protect them and bring about justice. Unfortunately, this is especially true when the victims are of color. Statistics show that law enforcement makes an arrest in 53% of gun homicides when the victim is white, but only 35% when the victim is Black or Hispanic. Microstamping is a powerful crime-solving ballistics investigative tool that has the ability to help law enforcement quickly solve gun crimes by linking spent cartridge casings found at a crime scene to a specific firearm without having to recover the firearm itself. HB 2769 will create a new market for microstamped guns and incentivize their production, helping bring them into use. Many local, state, and national gun violence prevention organizations have signed on in support of this bill. And this bill, I dedicated it to be in honor of a 22-year-old college student from my district in Skokie, Ed James, and his family. Ed was gunned down 2 years ago, steps outside the home he shared with his mother and siblings, and the crime remains unsolved. The recent shootings in Evanston reinforce the need for better laws. We send our heartfelt condolences to Carl Dennison's family, all of the victims, and everyone who is grieving. One of the most heart-wrenching aspects of the Sandy Hook Vigil, of the Sandy Hook shooting, was the tender ages of the children. Sadly, children continue to be affected by gun violence at a staggering rate. In 2018, one child or teen was injured by a gun every 32 minutes. Think about that. Every half hour, approximately, a child or a teen is injured by gun violence. Nationally, guns kill twice as many children and young people than cancer. U.S. children and teens are 17 times more likely to die from a peer than their peers in 25 other high-income countries combined. And I will say that Mayor Biss's comment about what is wrong with our nation is absolutely spot on. It's because we have as many guns, more guns in this nation than there are people. We need to reduce the easy access and availability to guns. We need to reduce the guns in circulation in civilian hands. Gun violence affects all children, but children of color are at greatest risk, which is unfortunately no surprise. No child is safe in a nation with easy access to deadly weapons. And even before the pandemic drove up fear in gun sales, there were too many firearms in our homes and streets. I'll end with a quote by Nelson Mandela. He once said, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way it treats its children." May we offer one another support and love at this time, and through our commitment and our work and our persistence, may we offer hope for a life free from gun violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Denise, and thank you for your leadership in Bloomfield. Copeland is here tonight as a board member for both People for a Safer Society and the National Council of Jewish Women, Chicago North Shore. Good evening. Thank you so much for including me in this amazing evening. A day in December 14th, 2012, Sandy Hook Elementary School, a day of infamy and unspeakable horror. December 12th, 2021, Trinity Lutheran Church, Skokie, Illinois. Evanston, Illinois. A day of remembrance, a day of tears, a day of comforting words and warm embraces as we remember those loved ones killed by the evil of gun violence. A day for an outpouring of love and a community's heartfelt support. The room filled to the ceiling with the pain and anguish of hundreds of voices, hundreds of losses, transcendent music, oceans of tears, and the joy of sweet memories of daughters and sons, sisters and brothers
of all ages, snatched from their families in an instant, in a moment of an assassin's anger, resentment, and madness, in a moment of horror, of disbelief, of blood and broken bodies. So much pain, so many dreams shattered, so many hopes soon buried in the dark ground. And yet, these survivors, these mothers and fathers, these siblings, these families stand tall, lift their voices to the sky to recall, to honor, to never forget the preciousness of those voices, now dimmed, the beauty of those faces that now smile down on us as we read their names and see them in our mind's eye. These families move forward with heavy but loving hearts, step by step, hour by hour, day by day. The life force within them encourages them to go on. They take on the challenging task of fighting the scourge of gun insanity that continues on in their communities and in their country. In their children's names, in their children's honor, they move forward, looking for the light.
Thank you, Bev. And finally, PFSS Board Member Howard Smith will now recognize families and victims and read the names of those lost to gun violence at Sandy Hook.
If you would please light your candles and stand, you are able, for the reading of the names of the victims of gun violence. First, we honor Alexandria, 18. We honor Maya, 25. Charlotte Bacon, 6. Daniel Barton, 7. Olivia Engel, 6. Josephine Gay, 7. Dylan Hockley, 6. Madeline Shu, 6. Catherine Hubbard, 6. Chase Kowalski, 7. Jesse Lewis, 6. Anna Marcus Green, 6. James Mattioli, 6. Grace McDonald, 7. Emily Parker, 6. Jack Pinto, 6. Noah Posner, 6. Caroline Privity, 6. Jessica Rakos, 6. Avian Richmond, 6. Benjamin Wheeler, 6. Allison Wyatt, 6. Rachel DeVino, 29. Don Lafferty Hawkspur, 47. Anne Marie Murphy, 52. Victoria Soto, 27. Lauren Rousseau, 30. Mary Sherlock, 56. Marta Torres, 61. Dylan Coleman, 34. Jose Fernandez, Francisco Sanchez Guerrero, 21. DeMarcus Anthony Coakley, 20. Stanley A. Butler III, 21. Carl Dennison III, 17. We would ask you to please join us now in a moment of silence as we remember all victims of gun violence.
This has been a difficult evening. It's been an inspiring evening. We thank all of you for your presence tonight, for your energy, for your passion, for your willingness to share. As we seek after a more just and loving future where there can be much more rejoicing and shared life-giving community, and far less mourning over community shattered life state. We thank especially all of our speakers and special guests tonight. Let us pray. Great One, we pray your blessing for those gathered here this night to speak, to listen, to mourn the losses that stab at our souls, to dare to dream of a time when the violence can abate and life can be affirmed, and we can celebrate restored community. We go from this place trusting that in our grief, our hoping, our praying, our work together, we will come to a hope-filled new tomorrow. Amen.
Thank you all for coming tonight and for sharing this time with us.